everything simi.
Holy crap! Oh, you can see the.
You can see everything over there.
Yeah, you could take it off here. Yeah. Take this off first. Crazy! That's a big house over there, and then over there. You can see the freeway from here. Out there, Joey.
Yeah. Now we're heading to the Air Force. The biggest Air Force plane ever.
Yeah, because you see those glass things, they had to take those off and display it.
Uh-huh. And there it is.
Oh, yeah?
We're here to mark that day in history when the Allied armies joined in battle to reclaim this continent for liberty. For 4 long
There's
years,
a police car.
much of Europe had been under a terrible shadow.
Almost.
Free nations had fallen. Jews cried out in the camps.
I
Millions
don't know what
cried
this
out for
thing is.
liberation.
Oh.
Europe was enslaved and the world prayed for its rescue. Here in Normandy, the rescue began. Here the Allies stood and fought against tyranny in a giant undertaking unparalleled in human history. We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of
And
men.
now we're going to go in
The air was filled with
the
the crack of
plane.
rifle fire and the roar of cannon.
For me to take that.
At dawn, on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944,
What you popping me for? I'm feeling
225 Rangers jumped off the British landing
You're gonna
craft
mess up my
and
fear,
ran over the
Heather.
cliffs. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion.
Can I help you?
Climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy
Now we
guns.
just gotta wait for
The
them to
Allies had
done
been
with the
told that some
picture.
of the mightiest of these guns were
That will
attacked.
be
They would be
entering.
trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance.
Right into the
Rangers
hands.
looked up and
Everybody
saw
was
the enemy
waving
soldiers
flags
at
and
the edge of
cheering.
the cliffs,
Everybody was so
shooting down at them
proud
with
of
machine
this
guns and throwing grenades.
business.
The American Rangers began to climb.
I'm gonna
They
turn
shot
this on
rope
and
ladders
then
over
we'll.
the face of these cliffs and began
Alright,
to
now
pull
we're
themselves up.
entering the
One
plane.
Ranger fell, another would take his place. When one rope was cut, a Ranger would grab another
Don't be
and
having
begin his climb
COVID.
again. They climbed, shot back, and held their footing.
Now,
Soon, one by one,
Hello.
the Rangers pulled themselves over the
Communication
top.
Center.
And in seizing the firm land at the top of these cliffs, they began to seize back the continent of Europe.
yeah.
Well, I have a huge head. That's the
225
problem.
came here. After 2
Okay.
days of fighting, only 90 could still bear arms. Behind me is a memorial
Yeah, I
that
can hit my
symbolizes
head
the
on
Ranger
this.
daggers that
I'm
were
putting my
thrust
head
into the
down
top
like this,
of these
so-
cliffs. And before me are the men who
One
Oh,
is-
now the first lady has
these
COVID
are the
now.
boys of Puente
Who?
Hope.
You know who the first lady is?
No.
Joe Biden's wife.
These are the men.
Really?
Miss
Who
Biden
took the
has
cliffs?
COVID now.
Oh, that sucks.
These are the champions who helped free a continent.
This is where
These are the
Ronald
heroes who
Reagan
helped
sits
end a
on this
war.
plane.
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
this
I
is
look
where
at
he
you and
used
I
to
think of
work,
the
and then the other thing is he
Words
likes
in
jelly
Stephen
beans.
Spender's
Look.
poem.
Yeah, so many jelly beans.
You were men who in your
Oh, well,
quote,
I can't see it
lives
down
fought for life
here. Oh, there's,
There's one
and
right
lived,
there.
left
there's
the
one.
vivid air signed with your honor. I think I know what you may be thinking right now. Thinking we were just part of a bigger effort. Everyone was brave that day. Well, everyone was.
Private Secretary and staff.
You remember the story of Bill Millen of the 51st Highlanders? 40 years ago today, British troops were pinned down near a bridge waiting desperately for help. Suddenly they heard the sound of bagpipes, and some thought they were dreaming. Well, they weren't. They looked up and saw Bill Millen with his bagpipes leading the reinforcements and ignoring the smack of the bullets into the ground around him. Lord Lovat was with him. Lord Lovat of Scotland, who calmly announced when he got to the bridge, "Sorry, I'm a few minutes late," as if he'd been delayed by a traffic jam, when in truth he'd just come from the bloody fighting on Sword Beach, which he and his men had just taken. There was the impossible valor of the Poles, who threw themselves between the enemy and the rest of Europe as the invasion took hold,
Didn't Reagan
and the
have
unsurpassed
just like a
courage
signed seat?
of the Canadians who had already seen the
Did
horrors of
Reagan have a
war
signed
on this
seat?
coast. They
President
knew what
Reagan
awaited them
had
there,
that first
but
cabin
they would not be
all the way up
deterred.
That was
Once
his
they hit Juno
there.
Beach, they never looked back.
He could really sit anywhere.
All
he
of these
wanted.
men
Be
were
the
part of a
president,
roll
but,
call of honor,
that's where he would
with
normally
names that
sign. And
spoke
if
of
you
a
look at
pride
the
as
flight
bright as
deck
the
all the
colors
way
they
up
bore.
forward where the pilot,
The
co-pilot,
Royal
there's
Winnipeg
a good seat in
Rifles,
there. President
Poland's
Reagan
24th
sometimes
Lancers,
sits pilot, co-pilot.
the Royal Scots Fusiliers, the Screaming
You know,
Eagles,
Today,
the
if
Yeomen
you
of
make
England's
it there,
armored divisions,
and you're
the
typing,
forces of Free
your
France,
typewriter will
the
automatically
Coast Guard's
record it.
Matchbox Fleet,
Well, back in the
and
1980s,
you,
didn't have
the American
computers.
Rangers.
That was that fancy, what you did have
40
was
summers have
selected
passed
to
since the
for
battle that you
type.
fought here.
What was
You were
nice
young
about
the
this
day
is
you
if
took
made
these
an error,
cliffs.
you just hit it back to you.
Some of you were hardly more than boys with the deepest joys of life before you,
That was
yet you risked everything here.
As you wander back
Why?
up here, you'll be going through the first
Why did you
door
do
here,
it?
and this first doorway, you'll be going through.
Well, what
the
impelled you
junior
to put
staff
aside
members,
the
and
instinct
then you
for
have
self-preservation and risk your lives to take these
Secret
cliffs?
Service, and then
What inspired
there'll be
all
a
the men
young
of
lady
the
in
armies
back
that met
after
here?
that'll talk to you about
We look at you and somehow we know the answer. It was
This is
faith,
you, Ava, right now.
it was loyalty.
All right, now we're out the plane.
Men of
Now we're
Normandy
going
had faith that
downstairs
what they were doing
again.
was right. Faith that they fought for all humanity.
Stairs.
Faith that a just God would grant them mercy on this beachhead.
Now we're just going to
It was the
see
deep
one of
knowledge,
these
and pray
trucks
God
here.
we have not lost it. That there
That's
is
a
a
policeman's
profound
truck.
moral difference
Yes, you're being recorded.
between the use of force for liberation
You're gonna be famous on
and the use of
YouTube.
force for conquest. You were here to liberate, not to conquer.
If you want to say hi to
So
everybody.
you and those
Are
others
you
did not
doing-
doubt your cause. And you were right not to doubt.
This is
You all
one of
knew that some
the
things
police
are worth
trucks.
dying for. One's country
Oh, look, a
is
limo.
worth dying for. And democracy is worth dying for because it's the most deeply honorable
Nice
form
limo.
of government ever devised
Yeah,
by
they
man.
had to use bulletproof windows.
All of you loved liberty.
So
All of you were willing to fight tyranny. And you knew the people of your countries were behind you.
And
The
policeman's
Americans
car.
who fought here that
I
morning
don't know why they put the
knew
policeman's
word
car
of the
here.
invasion was spreading through the darkness back home. They fought, they felt in their hearts, though they couldn't know in fact, that in Georgia, they were filling the churches at 4 a.m. In Kansas, they were kneeling on their porches and praying. And in Philadelphia, they were ringing the Liberty Bell. Something else helped the men of D-Day. Their rock-hard belief that Providence would have a great hand in the events that would unfold here, that God was an ally in this great cause. And so, the night before the invasion, when Colonel Wolverton asked his parachute troops to kneel with him in prayer, he told them, "Do not bow your heads, but look up so you can see God and ask His blessing in what we are about to do." Also that night, General Mitchell was coming, listening in the darkness to the promise God made to Joshua. "I will not fail you nor forsake you." These are the things that impelled. These are the things that shaped the unity of the Allies. When the war was over, there were lives to be rebuilt and governments to be returned to the people. There were nations to be reborn. Above all, there was a new peace to be assured. These were huge and daunting tasks, but the Allies summoned strength from the faith, belief, loyalty, and love of those who fell. They rebuilt a new Europe together. There was first a great reconciliation among those who had been enemies, all of whom had suffered so greatly. The United States did its part, creating the Marshall Plan to help rebuild our allies and our former enemies. The Marshall Plan led to the Atlantic Alliance, a great alliance that serves to this day as our shield for freedom, for prosperity, and for peace. In spite of our great efforts and successes, not all that followed the end of the war was happy or planned. Some liberated countries were lost. The great sadness of this loss echoes down to our own time in the streets of Warsaw, Prague, and East Berlin. The Soviet troops that came to the center of this continent did not leave when peace came. They're still there, uninvited, unwanted, unyielding, almost 40 years after. Because of this, Allied forces still stand on this continent. Today, as 40 years ago, our armies are here for only one purpose: to protect and defend democracy.
Now we're going to
The only
the
territories
memorial.
we hold are memorials like this one and graveyards where our heroes rest. We in America have learned bitter lessons from 2 world wars. It is better to be here ready to protect the peace than to take blind shelter across the sea, rushing to respond only after freedom is lost. We've learned that isolationism never was and never will be an acceptable response to tyrannical governments with an expansionist intent. But we try always to be prepared for peace, prepared to deter aggression, prepared to negotiate the reduction of arms, and yes, prepared to reach out again in the spirit of reconciliation. In truth, there is no reconciliation we would welcome more than a reconciliation with the Soviet Union, so together we can lessen the risks of war now and forever. It's fitting to remember here the great losses also suffered by the Russian people during World War II. 20 million perished, a terrible price that testifies to all the world the necessity of ending war. I tell you from my heart that we in the United States do not want war. We want a white